Bobby, you were in the original production of Stars and Stripes, weren't you?
Yes.
The one that you did before that, wasn't that Opus 34 with music by Schoenberg?
Yes,
this very
yes.
stark, creepy, morbid ballet.
Right.
And suddenly Balanchine comes in and says, we're now going to do Stars and Stripes to John Philip Sousa. What was the general feeling in the company?
Well, we just thought he was being patriotic because we were headed for, you know, in a year's time, we were going to the Far East, and we were there was a real uproar about whether we should take it or not, you know, to Japan and Australia and et cetera. But I don't remember any really positive or negative reaction. I know I was very excited because I had a
Big
principal role to do.
I heard that Dag Hammarskjöld, who at that time was the Secretary General of the United Nations, he saw it and he was quite disturbed because he thought it was imperialistic and would create a bad impression abroad.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why they questioned whether it should go on that tour to the Far East. But Mr. being Mr. B, he was going to do what he wanted to do.
There was a review, though, in Le Figaro in Paris, which declared, the worst banalities become great art when they are expressed with dash. This is true of Stars and Stripes.
Oh.
So at least you had at least one fan in Paris.
Right.
Possibly dangerous territory. What do you think, given our political climate, the reactions to Stars and Stripes might be today?
I don't know.
I guess it depends upon where you are. I don't know. We were very proud, you know. So.
Absolutely. I remember in Japan, we were performing in a kabuki theater, which had just been built, and it was right next to the hotel where we were all staying. So we walked right through the lobby into backstage, and the Leningrad Orchestra was staying in the hotel, and they gave them tickets to come and see the performance. And this was a kabuki theater with about 100-foot proscenium. And I remember me having some reservations about going from the wing all the way to center stage in one jump, which I had to do. And because that orchestra was in the audience, I was determined to do it. So I took off, and we were wearing character shoes with leather heels. And I hit the stage and went absolutely flat. But it just landed in such a way that this arm was underneath me, and I pushed off and hit the first note. And Vida was in the audience. Vida was our ballet mistress, Vida Brown. And I heard her scream at the top of her voice. And she thought, sure, I was going to wipe out and never get up. But I did, fortunately.
I remember seeing Stars when I wasn't in the company, and I remember sitting in the audience in the finale of Stars and Stripes. When that flag goes up, it just gives you goosebumps. It really, I remember being thrilled when I saw it. I thought it was great.
How did Balanchine go about teaching Stars and Stripes to you?
Learned it one day.
One day?
One day. He did
You
the
and
regiment.
the whole gang of men behind you?
And all the boys.
Boys.
Pretty simple music, just straight eights, so, you know. So it was not like some of the Stravinsky ballets where you counted to 132, and if you lost count, God help you. But this was fairly simple, and it was what was so wonderful working with Mr. Balanchine, because he always came prepared. And, you know, he was like a musical score. He just knew it back and forth, probably had played it on the piano forever. So he worked so fast and was so right on as far as what he wanted to do.
Diana did it originally. There were a lot of people that did it before I did. A lot. Then when I did it for 15 years.
It was Diana and Allegro.
Did you enjoy it?
Did it.
I hope.
Oh yeah, I loved doing it. It was very tiring though, and so I remember I get claustrophobic when I have things on my hands. So when I get out of breath, it used to bother me, so I would, as soon as it was over, the first thing I would do is rip off my gloves so I could breathe. Then I put them on for the finale. I breathe through my hands.
What about holding the horn? Is that a problem?
No, he added that one year. That was not an original.
No.
He thought it would be amusing, and so he put. And I actually didn't like it because I like to march with both arms, and I had this.
I don't remember the baton either.
Allegra said there was not a baton.
No.
But when I did it, there was a baton. And what happened in the finale is Balanchine gave me a baton for the finale. I had to learn how to twirl it because your part was always done by a small man. Right. And when I stood on point next to Villela, it looked like he was on his knees. Right. And Mr. B thought, okay, we have to do this differently. So I came out by myself with twirling a baton, and then I would throw it off into the wings.
You had not been a baton twirler as a child?
No, I was not a baton twirler as a child.
Am I playing a bugle?
No, I never did that either.
I remember at the very end, it used to be just, it seemed like we were lopsided there when the boy ran through and kneels and the two girls who punch air about the bus. I always felt like I was like this because tall girl one side, small girl on the other. And it was, and Diana was tired. She used to try to knock me over at the end.
Your variation, that changes at times into waltz tempo, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, right. There's that section in the middle, and then it goes back to the march.
Did that pose any problems of dancing or anything?
No. Balanchine's choreography so fits. You know, it actually, it's easy to learn too because it's so natural.
Right.
And Bobby, your variation, that cadet has to have some kind of military swagger without being obnoxious.
Right.
And I noticed that in the coaching session you did today, you were working on that. How does that, what do you do to get the proper amount of swagger and still be charming?
Well, he wanted it really like a regiment, you know, like a military regiment. And he was very square and very sharp all the turns. I remember he would absolutely make us do it over and over and over and over until we got that thing. And he always said, lead with your chest. Lead with your chest. When you walk, lead with your chest, you know. And so that was such a big help, you know, for everybody.
What do you emphasize when you're coaching that role?
It's not about height. It's not how high you can jump. It's length, and you have to be over your front leg. You can't be dragging in back. You have to push forward. Otherwise, you're never going to do it. You know, you're going to get so far behind that it's like I was teaching a young boy, which I don't. Today is a hops and seconds and pull in. You know, it was so important that you be on the music and that. And I remember that was the hardest thing I had to learn when Mr. B was staging. It was that, and be right on the music to pull in. And he was having trouble today, but finally got it. It was great.
Gloria, what do you emphasize in coaching a dancer in your role?
Well, you know, there's one thing that I always hear when Balanchine sits on my shoulder, and he always used to say, don't pretend to dance. And so he didn't like you, he didn't mean don't put anything into it, but he didn't want it to look phony. He wanted it to come from you and come from the music. And the music tells you what to do, and he didn't like you to use resting steps, you know, and do little things that would fill in time. He wanted you to do it 110%. He liked you to move big, and that's when I was coaching today. It was getting, some of it looked almost sentimental. And I think that's not what he intended. You know, it really were military marches. It should look like a parade with young people with lots of energy out there dancing. I don't know, I think Mr. B liked to play with things too, you know.
All the time.
I think he would get a kick out of it, and that's why he brought in the horn. You know, why not? You know, I mean, why not? Let's add some pizzazz to it or something.
How much do you make references to something like the Rockettes when the ballet was, when you're coaching and talking to dancers? When the ballet was new, all kinds of the critics would mention this is a tribute to the Rockettes and baton twirlers and 4th of July parades.
I think it was the togetherness, you know, as it was so rehearsed that everybody had to look the same because it was a regiment, you know.
We always had trouble with the tall girl regiment being together.
Right.
It's a very hard dance. There's a lot of jumping in it, and especially that one step. And if somebody doesn't have an elevation and somebody else is running, or there's another part where all the girls are kicking their legs out. But the Rockettes never had to move like a Balanchine ballet, and so I always thought that the tall girl regiment was the hardest to keep together. Probably still is.
According to anything I've looked up, Balanchine was once asked by a reporter, "Does your new work, Stars and Stripes, does your new work have a story, Mr. Balanchine?" And his answer was, "Oh yes." "And what is the story?" And Balanchine said, "The United States."
That's great.
He was very patriotic.
He was also witty.
Yeah, yes, he was. He'd also pull your leg, you know, a lot of the time. And that was what was charming about him.